On April 20th, 1968, in Birmingham, England, members of the Conservative Party gathered to hear a speech by ENOCH Powell, the Shadow Secretary of Defense. As the minutes passed, anticipation mounted among the unusually large crowd. When Powell entered and began speaking, he addressed the subjects of immigration and integration. He stated, "As I look ahead, I am filled with foreboding. Like the Roman, I seem to see the river Tiber foaming with much blood." The following day, Conservative Party leader Edward Heath dismissed Powell from the shadow cabinet for delivering a speech many considered inflammatory, though others viewed it as prophetic. ENOCH Powell, born John Enoch Powell on June 16, 1912, in Stechford, Birmingham, was the son of Albert Enoch Powell, a headmaster, and Ellen Mary Breeze, a former teacher. His family hailed from Radnorshire, Wales, and had moved to Birmingham during the 19th century migration from agricultural communities to industrial cities. Despite his father's profession marking the family as middle class, Powell's working-class heritage influenced his perspectives. Raised in a household where education was paramount, Powell's mother played a significant role in his intellectual development. She introduced him to reading at an early age, using alphabet cards to enhance his learning. By his teenage years, she was teaching him Greek, a subject still prevalent in British schools at the time. Her influence was instrumental in shaping Powell's academic and intellectual pursuits. ENOCH Powell, born on June 16, 1912 in Birmingham, England, was a renowned British politician and scholar. Educated at King Edward's School in Birmingham, Powell demonstrated exceptional academic abilities from a young age. In 1925, he began attending a prestigious secondary school in Birmingham, where he excelled and was soon regarded as a promising scholar. Beyond his academic prowess, Powell was also a talented musician, specializing in playing the clarinet. By the time he completed his secondary education and before attending university, Powell was already working on producing his own translation of Herodotus's Histories, the ancient Greek account of the Persian-Greek Wars, considered to be the first work of historical writing in the Western tradition. He would later publish his edition of Herodotus and several further commentaries on the histories in the 1930s and 1940s. For a teenager to undertake such a scholarly endeavor was highly unusual. Powell's early aptitude for the classics and excellent school performance earned him a place at Trinity College, Cambridge, where he began his studies in 1930. It was a challenging time in Britain's history as the effects of the Great Depression began to take hold across the country. At Cambridge, Powell studied the classics and completed his three-year course in 1933 with first-class honors. He was a brilliant undergraduate, scholar, and by the age of 20, he was already submitting pieces to academic journals for publication. While his earliest work focused on translating Herodotus and other texts, Powell expanded his research to examine ancient papyrus texts from the Greek world. This work culminated in the publication in 1936 of an edition of papyri collected decades earlier by the Cambridge biblical scholar J. Rendell Harris. Harris had gathered old manuscripts of early Christian writings and biblical texts, including fragments of non-canonical Gospels that did not make it into the New Testament. Powell edited and published some of these texts that Harris had collected. Simultaneously, Powell continued to focus on Greek and Roman classics and began work on a translation of the history of the Peloponnesian War by Thucydides, a contemporary of Herodotus. He would publish an edition of this work as well in the 1940s. Additionally, he improved his abilities in French, Italian, and German, read and studied widely, and won numerous scholarly prizes at Cambridge. Despite his academic achievements, Powell was somewhat of a loner and wrote poetry as an emotional outlet. He had an early fascination with German culture and was dismayed at the rise of the Nazis to power in Germany in 1933 and the book Burnings that began shortly thereafter. One of his German heroes was the philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche. In 1937, Powell was appointed Professor of Greek at the University of Sydney, becoming the youngest professor in the British Empire at the age of 25. He revised Henry Stuart Jones's edition of Thucydides' Historia for the Oxford University Press in 1938. His most lasting contribution to classical scholarship was his Lexicon to Herodotus, published by Cambridge University Press the same year, which was well received by critics. Soon after his arrival in Australia, Powell was appointed curator of the Nicholson Museum at the University of Sydney. He informed the Vice-Chancellor that war would soon begin in Europe and that when it did, he would be heading home to enlist in the army. He returned to Britain in 1940 and served in the British Army during World War II, rising to the rank of Brigadier and earning recognition for his service. After the war, Powell entered politics, gaining prominence as a Member of Parliament for Wolverhampton South West in 1950. He became known for his controversial rhetoric concerning Britain's non-white population and for his opposition to the nation's entry into the European Economic Community. His political career was marked by his strong convictions and willingness to speak out on issues he felt were important, regardless of the potential for controversy. ENOCH Powell's legacy is deeply divisive. While some view him as a prophet who warned of the challenges facing Britain, others see him as a figure whose views contributed to racial tensions and divisions within society. Regardless of one's perspective on his politics, Powell's contributions to classical scholarship and his impact on British political life are undeniable. ENOCH Powell, 1912 and 1998, was a British politician and classical scholar known for his controversial Rivers of Blood speech in 1968, which strongly criticised immigration and the Race Relations Bill. Born in Birmingham, Powell was the only child of Albert and Ellen Powell, both teachers. He attended King Edward's School in Birmingham, excelling in classics and languages. At Trinity College, Cambridge, he studied classics and philosophy, becoming a leading scholar and winning numerous academic prizes. Fluent in several languages, including Greek, Latin, German, and French, Powell was known for his intense dedication to his studies. Academic career. In 1937, Powell became the youngest professor in the British Empire at age 25, when he was appointed Professor of Greek at the University of Sydney. His scholarly work included a lexicon of Herodotus and a revised edition of Thucydides' Historia. He also edited early Christian manuscripts collected by J. Rendell Harris. Military service. During World War II, Powell enlisted in the British Army, rising from private to brigadier. He served in the Intelligence Corps and contributed to translating Russian military documents. Political career. After the war, Powell entered politics, winning a seat in Parliament in 1950 as a Conservative. He served in various positions, including Minister of Health from 1960 to 1963. In 1968, he delivered the Rivers of Blood speech, predicting civil unrest due to immigration, which led to his dismissal from the shadow cabinet. Legacy. Powell's legacy is divisive. While some view him as a prophet warning of societal challenges, others criticize him for promoting racial tensions. His influence persists in discussions on immigration and national identity in Britain. ENOCH Powell, a British politician and classical scholar, aspired to emulate his intellectual hero, Friedrich Nietzsche, by securing a university professorship at the age of 24. Although Powell achieved this goal at 25, he was appointed as the Professor of Greek at the University of Sydney in 1938, becoming the youngest professor in the British Empire at that time. Upon arriving in Australia, Powell made a bold prediction to the Vice-Chancellor of the university, stating that Britain would soon be at war with Germany and that he intended to return to Europe to fight the Nazis. His foresight proved accurate, as within weeks news reached Australia of Germany's annexation of Austria, followed by the Munich Conference in September 1938, the annexation of Czechoslovakia in March 1939, and the outbreak of World War II in September 1939, when Germany invaded Poland. Powell returned to Britain in September 1939 during the Phoney War, a period of limited military activity. Despite his eagerness to serve on the front lines, the military assigned him to administrative roles due to his extensive language skills and academic background. In 1941, Powell was posted to Cairo, where he contributed to organizing various aspects of the campaign in Egypt. He achieved the rank of Lieutenant General in the summer of 1942. In November 1942, during Operation Torch, the Western Allies invaded Morocco and Algeria. Subsequently, in January 1943, a major conference of Allied leaders took place in Casablanca, Morocco, with Winston Churchill and Franklin D. Roosevelt in attendance. Powell participated as a British staff officer in Africa. It was during this time that he began to develop the idea that the United States would seek to replace Britain as the preeminent global superpower after the war, a perspective that influenced his views on American involvement in the post-war world. Powell's experiences during the war and his observations of global power dynamics significantly shaped his political ideology and his later controversial positions on issues such as immigration and British sovereignty. ENOCH Powell, a British imperialist, longed for the era when Britain was at the zenith of its power in the late 19th century. His admiration for the empire led him to eagerly accept a posting to India as the North African campaign concluded in Allied victory in the spring of 1943. By August 1943, he was in Delhi, where the adversary was the Empire of Japan. Despite suffering significant defeats in the Pacific, the Japanese were still advancing in the India-Burma region, threatening to push westward toward Kolkata. Over the next 2 years, Powell was involved in planning the campaign as part of the army staff in Delhi. He repeatedly sought to serve on the front lines, but his requests were denied. Nonetheless, he genuinely enjoyed being in India and immersed himself in the country's culture during wartime. Given his linguistic prowess, he learned to read Urdu and began studying Indian literature in its original language. By the time the war in Europe ended in May 1945, strategic planning in India was shifting focus to the post-war situation. Promises had been made to the people of the British Raj regarding independence in exchange for their support during the war. While the government aimed to delay this as long as possible, independence was inevitable. Additionally, hundreds of thousands of troops needed to be demobilized, many suffering from tropical diseases. Much of Powell's work in 1945 involved planning for the post-war situation in India. He was promoted to the rank of Brigadier during this period. Once the fighting against the Japanese subsided in the autumn, Powell was offered a senior military administrative position in peacetime India. He declined the offer, having developed an ambition to become the Viceroy of the British Raj. He believed that pursuing a political career in Britain, combined with his academic understanding of Indian culture, could help him achieve this goal. Upon returning to England, Powell was stunned to witness British rule collapse in India within just 2 years of the war's end, leading to a chaotic and bloody partition between Hindu-majority India and Muslim-majority Pakistan. This event marked the beginning of Britain's post-war retreat from empire. While in India, Powell immersed himself in the culture, learning Urdu and studying Indian literature. His ambition to become viceroy was shattered with India's independence in 1947. He took the news badly, walking the streets of London all night, reflecting on the profound change in his world. This experience deeply influenced his views on communalism, dissent, violence, and anarchy. ENOCH Powell, 1912 to 1998, was a British politician and academic known for his controversial views on immigration and the British Empire. Born in Birmingham, he excelled in classics at Cambridge University, later becoming a professor of Greek at the University of Sydney at age 25. During World War II, Powell served in the British Army, rising to the rank of Brigadier and contributing to intelligence operations in India and North Africa. After the war, Powell entered politics, serving as a Conservative Member of Parliament. He gained national attention in 1968 with his Rivers of Blood speech, in which he criticized mass immigration and the Race Relations Bill, predicting social unrest. The speech led to his dismissal from the shadow cabinet by Conservative leader Edward Heath. Powell remained a divisive figure, advocating for British sovereignty and a return to traditional values. His legacy includes the term Powellism, describing his right-wing libertarian political views. Despite his controversial stances, Powell's influence on British politics and discourse remained significant. ENOCH Powell, 1912-1998, was a British politician, scholar, and writer, known for his controversial views on immigration and his opposition to Britain's membership in the European Economic Community. Born in Birmingham, he was a classical scholar and served in the British Army during World War II, rising to the rank of Brigadier. He was elected as a Member of Parliament, MP, for Wolverhampton South West in 1950 and later represented South Down for the Ulster Unionist Party from 1974 to 1987. Powell gained national attention in 1968 for his Rivers of Blood speech, in which he criticized immigration from the Commonwealth and opposed the Race Relations Bill. The speech led to his dismissal from the Conservative Party's shadow cabinet by then-leader Edward Heath. Despite the controversy, Powell's views resonated with a significant portion of the British public. Throughout his career, Powell remained a divisive figure, admired by some for his intellectual rigor and criticized by others for his inflammatory rhetoric. His legacy continues to be a subject of debate in British political history. 2329. O ChatGPT Dis. ENOCH Powell, 1912-1998, was a British politician and scholar, best known for his controversial Rivers of Blood speech in 1968, which criticized immigration policies and predicted societal upheaval. Born in Birmingham, he excelled academically, studying at Cambridge University and later becoming a professor of Greek at the University of Sydney. During World War II, Powell served in the British Army, rising to the rank of Brigadier. He entered politics in the late 1940s and was elected as a Conservative Member of Parliament, MP, for Wolverhampton South West in 1950. Powell held various positions, including Minister of Health, 1960-1963, and Shadow Secretary of State for Defense, 1965 to 1968. His 1968 speech led to his dismissal from the Conservative shadow cabinet and made him a national figure. In 1974, Powell left the Conservative Party over its support for British membership in the European Economic Community, joining the Ulster Unionist Party and representing South Down in Parliament until 1987. He remained active in politics and writing until his death in 1998. ENOCH Powell, a British politician and former Conservative MP, is best known for his controversial 1968 Rivers of Blood speech, in which he criticized immigration policies and predicted civil unrest. The speech led to his dismissal from the Conservative Party's shadow cabinet and remains a divisive topic in British political history. Born on June 16, 1912 in Birmingham, Powell was a classical scholar and served as a brigadier in the British Army during World War II. He later became a professor of Greek at the University of Sydney. Powell entered politics in the late 1940s, gaining prominence as a Member of Parliament, MP, for Wolverhampton South West in 1950. In the 1968 speech, Powell argued that mass immigration would lead to social tensions and violence, using a reference from Virgil's Aeneid to illustrate his concerns. The speech sparked widespread debate and criticism, with many accusing Powell of racism. Despite this, he gained support from certain segments of the British public. Powell's political career continued after the speech, though he was no longer part of the Conservative Party's leadership. He later represented South Down in Northern Ireland as a member of the Ulster Unionist Party. Powell remained a controversial figure until his death on February 8, 1998. For more information on Powell's life and speeches, you can visit the J. Enoch Powell Literary Trust website, api.parliament.uk +3 enochpowell.info +3 enochpowell.info +3. Enoch Powell, 1912-1998, foi um acadêmico, político e orador britânico, conhecido por suas posições conservadoras e discursos polêmicos. Nascido em Birmingham, ingressou na Universidade de Cambridge, onde se destacou em latim e grego, e tornou-se professor de grego na Universidade de Sydney aos 25 anos. Durante a Segunda Guerra Mundial, serviu no Exército Britânico, ascendendo ao posto de brigadeiro. Em 1950, Powell foi eleito deputado pelo Partido Conservador, representando o Wolverhampton South West. Durante os anos 1950, destacou-se como orador e defensor de políticas econômicas liberais. Em 1960, foi nomeado ministro da Saúde, cargo que ocupou até 1963. Durante seu mandato, implementou reformas no Serviço Nacional de Saúde e lidou com a crise do talidomida, promovendo campanhas de conscientização. No entanto, Powell ficou mais conhecido por seu discurso de 1968, conhecido como Rivers of Blood, no qual expressou preocupações sobre a imigração e as políticas de relações raciais no Reino Unido. O discurso gerou controvérsia e resultou em sua remoção do cargo de ministro da Defesa Sombra. Apesar disso, Powell manteve uma base de apoio significativa e continuou a influenciar o debate político sobre imigração. Nos anos seguintes, Powell se afastou do Partido Conservador devido ao apoio à adesão do Reino Unido à Comunidade Econômica Europeia. Alinhou-se com o Partido Unionista do Ulster e continuou ativo na política até 1987. Faleceu em 1998, deixando um legado controverso e sendo lembrado como um dos oradores mais eloquentes do Parlamento Britânico. Enoch Powell, 1912-1998, was a British politician, scholar and writer known for his controversial views on immigration and British identity. He served as a Member of Parliament, MP for Wolverhampton South West from 1950 to 1974, and later for South Down under the Ulster Unionist Party until 1987. Powell held various ministerial positions, including Minister of Health from 1960 to 1963, and Shadow Secretary of State for Defence from 1965 to 1968. Born in Birmingham, Powell was educated at Trinity College, Cambridge, and became a professor of Greek at the University of Sydney at age 25. During World War II, he served in the British Army, rising to the rank of Brigadier. After the war, he entered politics and became known for his strong opposition to the UK's membership in the European Economic Community and his advocacy for free market policies. Powell's most infamous moment came in 1968 with his Rivers of Blood speech, where he criticised immigration policies and predicted societal upheaval. The speech was widely condemned as racist, leading to his dismissal from the Conservative Party's leadership. Despite this, he retained a dedicated following and continued to influence political discourse around immigration throughout his career. Powell's most infamous moment came in 1968 with his Rivers of Blood speech, where he criticized immigration policies and predicted societal upheaval. The speech was widely condemned as racist, leading to his dismissal from the Conservative Party's leadership. Despite this, he retained a dedicated following and continued to influence political discourse around immigration throughout his career. In the 1970s, Powell became increasingly critical of American foreign policy, particularly regarding the Vietnam War, and advocated for a stronger focus on European defense. His views on immigration and national identity remained central to his political platform. Powell's legacy is deeply divisive. He is remembered by some as a staunch defender of British sovereignty and by others as a proponent of xenophobic policies. His impact on British politics, especially concerning debates on immigration and national identity, continues to be a subject of discussion and analysis. Enoch Powell, 1912-1998, was a British politician, classical scholar and writer, best known for his controversial 1968 Rivers of Blood speech. Born in Birmingham, Powell served in World War II, rising to the rank of Brigadier. After the war, he entered politics, becoming a Conservative Member of Parliament (MP) for Wolverhampton South West in 1950. He later represented South Down as an Ulster Unionist MP from 1974 to 1987. Enoch Powell, 1912-1998, was a British politician, classical scholar and writer, best known for his controversial 1968 Rivers of Blood speech. Born in Birmingham, Powell served in World War II, rising to the rank of Brigadier. After the war, he entered politics, becoming a Conservative Member of Parliament (MP) for Wolverhampton South West in 1950. He later represented South Down as an Ulster Unionist MP from 1974 to 1987. Roman, I seem to see the River Tiber foaming with much blood. The speech was widely condemned as racist and led to Powell's dismissal from his position as Shadow Defense Secretary. Despite the controversy, Powell retained a significant following and continued to influence British politics. He was known for his strong opposition to the UK's membership in the European Economic Community and for advocating for a return to traditional British values. His legacy remains divisive, with some viewing him as a defender of British identity and others as a promoter of xenophobia and racial division. Enoch Powell's Rivers of Blood speech, delivered on April 20, 1968, remains one of the most controversial moments in post-war British politics. At a Conservative Party meeting in Birmingham, Powell criticised the Race Relations Bill, which aimed to outlaw discrimination based on race or ethnicity. He warned that mass immigration from Commonwealth countries could lead to civil unrest, invoking a passage from Virgil's Aeneid to predict the River Tiber foaming with much blood. The speech sparked immediate backlash. The Times labelled it an evil speech, and Powell was dismissed from his position as Shadow Defense Secretary by Conservative leader Edward Heath. Despite this, Powell received widespread support from certain segments of the public, including over 100,000 letters backing his views. A Gallup poll indicated that 74% of the population agreed with his concerns about immigration. Critics argue that Powell's rhetoric fueled racial tensions and legitimized xenophobia. In the aftermath, incidents of racial violence occurred, and many immigrants reported increased discrimination. The speech also polarized political discourse, with some viewing Powell as a defender of British identity and others as a promoter of division. Decades later, Powell's speech continues to influence debates on immigration and national identity in the UK. It serves as a stark reminder of the power of political rhetoric and its potential to shape public opinion and societal divisions. Enoch Powell was a British Conservative politician known for his controversial views on immigration and economic policies in the 1960s. In October 1968, he delivered the Morecambe budget, proposing significant tax cuts and reductions in government spending, including the abolition of foreign aid and the Enoch Powell was a British Conservative politician known for his controversial views on immigration and economic policies in the 1960s. In October 1968, he delivered the Morecambe budget, proposing significant tax cuts and reductions in government spending, including the abolition of foreign aid and the privatization of state-owned industries. Although his ideas were not adopted by the Conservative Party at the time, they later influenced the economic policies of Margaret Thatcher in the 1980s.
In April 1968, Powell delivered the Rivers of Blood speech, expressing strong opposition to immigration from Commonwealth countries and the Race Relations Bill, which aimed to outlaw discrimination based on race or ethnicity. The speech was widely condemned as racist, leading to Powell's dismissal from his position as Shadow Defense Secretary. Despite the controversy, Powell's views resonated with a significant portion of the British public at the time.
Following his dismissal, Powell continued to influence British politics from the backbenches, advocating for policies that emphasized national sovereignty and traditional values. His legacy remains a subject of debate, with some viewing him as a defender of British identity and others as a promoter of divisive rhetoric.